It is Tuesday night in East Lansing. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. Come on in, gather around. We're going to talk Michigan State sports for the next hour or so, maybe a little bit longer. This is called Spartan Mag Live. We do this every week, doing it on Tuesday nights now. Had to do it Thursday last week, hoping to do it every Tuesday night. SpartanMag.com is the Rivals.com Michigan State site. Go check it out. Every week, we have questions from maggers posted at SpartanMag.com at the Underground Bunker message board. We field those questions here. Also, we take questions live in the chat area. Feel free to post some questions over there pertaining to Michigan State sports and Michigan State football and whatever kind of nonsense you guys want to bring up. It's great to have a lot of the usual crowd gathering around already. Grab a refreshment. Let me know what you're enjoying tonight. Hope to have some new stragglers straggling in. Hopefully everybody behaves themselves, unlike the call-in show situation we had, the post-game call-in show situation we had Saturday night. Got that thing deleted, had a problem over there, but not a problem anymore, except for that guy that made the mistake. Has to live the rest of his life being him, which is not cool. Anyway, let's go straight to the Underground Bunker message board. These questions were posed over there at the Underground Bunker message board. Got about 9 or 10 questions today. We'll take them in mailbag form. Talk about Michigan State versus Indiana coming up. A little bit Michigan State, Iowa from a couple of days ago. Michigan State coming off a bad loss. You guys know that. Michigan State 1-2 taking on Indiana Saturday at Spartan Stadium. I'll be missing you guys. Wish you guys could be there. Someday soon it's going to happen again. And we'll have to give Brez Prez back in town to tailgate a little bit. Let's go to the Underground Bunker message board for the questions. Hayden in Grand Rapids, Michigan asks, why don't you think the casual fan understands the fact that this is a rebuild and this team shouldn't have the expectation to compete with the big boys yet? Perhaps it's what Coach D'Antonio built, but it blows my mind that Spartans fans' expectations are this high. Okay, that was the first question that was posted. That's the first one we got to. You know, in a lot of ways, it's good that the expectations are that high. And these are things we went through the last couple of years when D'Antonio's program was losing a lot of steam in a lot of ways. A lot of people wanted to move on. Others, including myself, felt that he could move on whenever he darn well pleased. As it turned out, he pleased in February and moved on. Probably best for him, probably best for the program, considering the state of the assistant coaches and some of the things that were going on. But you're asking why don't the casual fans understand that this is a rebuild and the team shouldn't have the expectations to compete with the big boys yet? I'm not really gathering that. The fans that I'm hearing from, especially those at the Underground Bunker message board, seem to be pretty patient, I think, and understanding. Now, you don't want to lose to Rutgers and you don't want to lose 49-7. Those were terrible looking losses. And, Michigan State trailing 35-0 against Iowa throughout the 13-year tenure of Mark D'Antonio's tenure at the helm of Michigan State. Michigan State never trailed a game by 35 points at halftime. They never they never turned the ball over 7 times in a game like they did against Rutgers. So 2 of the first 3 games already negative standards that Mark D'Antonio teams never set. So I can understand the hand-wringing going on there and a lot of the questions. But I don't think a lot of Michigan State fans were expecting Michigan State to compete with the big boys this year. And they've not played a big boy. I mean, Michigan was expected to be a big boy, and Michigan State beat them. Iowa last year was 10-3. Finished number 15 in the country. Probably not respected as a big boy, unquote, but they certainly played big boy football on Saturday. They're 0-2. They should be 3-0. Any other big boys on the schedule? Penn State's 0-3. They don't look like a big boy this year. Of course, Ohio State is, but I don't think any Michigan State fans are expected to compete with Ohio State this year. So, Hayden, I appreciate that your question. You're here a lot of times at the Spartan Mag Live, but maybe you're mixing with Michigan State fans, different Michigan State fans than I'm seeing or hearing. But your point's well taken. Got another question here. Solo Beer Guy from Westland says, hey, Comp, it doesn't seem that the staff has made linebacker recruiting a huge priority yet. Now it looks like they have virtually no depth at the position. What 2022 linebackers have shown interest, if any? Are there any possible transfers at all? All right, let me check out something here. Let me go to the chat area real quick. Had to remove the guy that posted Go Blue, so I got rid of that. I know a lot of you guys, you guys probably don't want to deal with that here right now. Not that Michigan's got much to talk about. I appreciate a Michigan fan coming in. All right, the same guys coming in and saying Go Green. Not sure what that's all about. But anyway, sorry for the pause there. We'll see how that one goes. YouTube does a good job that if anything off kilter gets, okay, he was kidding, he says. Anything off kilter, usually YouTube flags it. But anyway, linebacker recruiting, we posted about that at the Underground Bunker message board early this morning, Tuesday morning, about Michigan State's linebacker situation and really the lack of, I don't know if player development is the right word, but a high level of attrition at the linebacker position. And it's showing itself. Hold on a second. It's showing itself this year when you look at Michigan State and the problems that they have. And I asked Mel Tucker about that today during the press conference. That Michigan State has played several defensive backs. Some have played well. Some are just learning. Several defensive linemen. Some of those guys in the defensive line are looking better than I anticipated. But at the linebacker position, Saturday in a blowout situation, Michigan State only played 3 linebackers. They started the game with Antoine Simmons and Noah Harvey, brought in Chase Klein, and that was it. Those were the only 3 that played. And Antoine Simmons was hurt, only played about 35 snaps. So they stuck with Harvey and Klein. And Harvey and Klein had some problems with gap integrity, reading and reacting and filling the correct gap at the correct time. And I asked Tucker about that also. And I brought up a play there was a pass play to the flat that Noah Harvey looked at me like, I think that was Michigan State's second defensive drive, little swing pass, got out for about 25 yards. And it was a second drive. It was a 2nd and 7. Second drive when they went up 14-0. Looking at that one again, looked to me like everybody at Michigan State in the back 7 was playing man-to-man. And it looked like Noah Harvey took a zone drop. And then by the time he realized that the running back was his guy, he's got to take a banana peel to it. And there was some traffic. It gets out. He's uncovered. Goes for about 20 yards. Key play in the second drive. The score was already 7-0. Can't have that. I'm sure that Mel Tucker would like to get to the point that if someone makes a mistake like that, they're off the field. Looks to me like they don't have a lot of depth behind there to take people off the field at the linebacker position. Just Lord Boateng is a guy that I projected to be in the playing group this year. He was on special teams the first couple of weeks. Did not get on the field against Iowa. Not sure if there was an injury situation involved, including him in practice or something like that. But we're not seeing just Lord Boateng. And they didn't have a lot of other linebackers aside from them. At Michigan, they traveled with Cal Halliday, true freshman. Traveled with Avery Dunn, who I think is going to be a defensive end. Traveled with, I've mentioned this on the message board, Terry O'Connor, a walk-on from Traverse City. I'll have to watch pregame this Saturday to get a better idea of what's going on second string and maybe even third string during pregame because we're not able to watch practice and they don't give us a depth chart. I asked Mel Tucker about that today, about Michigan State's the pointing out that they only played 3 linebackers and how much of a challenge it is with the linebacker talent that he inherited. To his credit, he was kind of defensive about the question. I don't think he wants to say anything bad about the players he inherited because he doesn't want his current players to feel bad. Doesn't want to say anything disrespectful to Mark D'Antonio. So I get that. Kind of a tough thing for him to tread, I suppose. And his philosophy is any players that he has, he does not consider them inherited players. He considers them his players. And he wants to turn them into the best players they can be and make progress toward a winning level of football at some point. So he didn't really go into details about the depth chart, where they need to be, but he got a little grouchy, which I appreciated. Talked about some plays that were left on the field, including that play right after Michigan State scored its only touchdown in the third quarter. Opening drive, second half, went down, scored, and then it's 35-7, I think it was. Very next play, Iowa goes about 70 yards on an inside zone. He had the wham action by the tight end. I talked about this in the postgame call-in show and also the VCast. Split zone play. Tucker talked about today that they've seen that, they worked on that, and it wasn't fit properly. He didn't mention any names, but it was Noah Harvey didn't fit his gap properly. We know Noah Harvey can play. Finished last season doing a good job. Played well against Michigan. Struggled against Rutgers. Seems to me he's having trouble just reading and reading backfield flow and pressing the gap where he's supposed to press it. I've tried to find out how difficult it is to be in a one-gap system for 3 years and then change to what they're doing this year, which is a little bit more two-gap. It's like half and half, two-gap and one-gap. Now, Michigan State did more two-gapping last year than in the previous 12 years. So he has to have some experience in that, but routinely kind of lacking some instincts there. Now, there's some times when they are one-gapping, when he shoots it and had a nice tackle for loss. One time when he chased something down in the alley over the sideline, where he looks like a football player, a guy that can go, run, tackle, hit, do those things. And his heart's in the right place. So I'm trying to get an idea of when he might be able to arrive to play the type of football that they want. Mark D'Antonio used to talk about the 10,000-hour rule. A lot of you people know what the 10,000-hour rule is pertaining to various disciplines, not just in sports. D'Antonio said that was an impact, has an impact in football development also. And I'm just wondering if the 10,000 rule gets interrupted a little bit when you have a change in scheme. A lot of football people, including Ron Armstrong, Big Moobie, they tell me that, hey, football's football, concepts are concepts, you can pick right up with it. And I'm sure that's true. I wonder if that's true with linebackers, though. I don't know what the problem is with Noah Harvey. He plays really well, but has about 4 or 5 plays that kind of hurt things here and there. I know he can play better. I know he's trying, and I know a lot of Michigan State fans are rooting for him. Why am I bringing him up? Well, Michigan State lost the game 49-7. People are asking me, asking people at the SpartanMag.com news organization, what's going on? What can be fixed? What are the chances it gets fixed? To me, that's one of the things that's a little bit of a loose wheel, needs to get fixed. And Mel Tucker talked about that today during the press conference. And you can see that press conference over at SpartanMag.com. We will probably post the video of that press conference here at the YouTube channel as well at some point. That press conference today, Tucker was talking about Indiana. Before we start talking about that, it's been a big week so far for Michigan State recruiting. I think 4 commitments, maybe 3 commitments in the last 5 days or so. Maybe 4 commitments. Rayshawn Benny was the big one. Top 100 lineman out of Oak Park, Michigan. 6'5", 270. We've talked about him here for several weeks. Michigan State slowly turned it around, went ahead and finished with him, getting a commitment from him on November 9th. He was talking to Josh Hemholt over at the Rivals.com Midwest recruiting analyst. Rayshawn Benny, some of the key takeaways from the things he told Josh Hemholt was the way that the Michigan State staff made him a priority. The entire staff made him a priority, and that resonated with him. Also, he feels there's a new culture getting started at Michigan State, wants to be a part of it. He says Mel Tucker and the staff have told him that this will be their first recruiting class, and it's going to be something they consider a turn-the-corner type of group. Rayshawn Benny wants to be a part of it. And, he kind of said Michigan State beating Michigan the way they did wasn't the main reason, but it certainly helped. So Rayshawn Benny, big-time national top 200 guy, the highest-ranked recruit in the commitment class so far. I would imagine he'll be the highest-ranked recruit in the 2021 class for Michigan State. Just today, they got a commitment from Stephen Johnson, defensive back, 6'1", 165, corner/safety, maybe a nickel guy from Venice, Florida. Last year, he was a quarterback with a lot of quickness. You had to kind of project what he would look like as a defensive back. Harlan Barnett liked him from his days in Florida. They recruited him, continued to recruit him. He committed to Rutgers before Michigan State got involved with a new staff. Michigan State offered. He decommitted from Rutgers months ago. Michigan State continued to recruit him. Maybe didn't press the gas full blast, but then they went ahead and took him today as a commitment. He had offers from Virginia, Rutgers, and mid-majors. I've not seen senior film of him, so I don't know if he's playing more defense now, but Stephen Johnson, interesting recruit. Also interesting, junior college offensive tackle Brandon Baldwin, originally from Southfield A&T. Now he's at Independence Community College, Independence, Kansas, 6'7", 305. His upbringing was a basketball player, good lateral movement, gives you a chance to be a guy that can give you some pass protection with long arms and big frame. The basketball footwork, had offers from Maryland, Louisville, and mid-majors. His junior college this year, COVID wiped out their season, so Michigan State was looking at film, some workout film, and I think they did some scrimmaging there at Independence Community College. Brandon Baldwin has not visited campus, so like I said, an interesting one, but some plus physical attributes there. Brandon Baldwin, Michigan State committed a few days ago. So you look into that offensive line class now. You've got Brandon Baldwin. You've got Ethan Boyd, 6'7", 290 out of East Lansing. Gino Vandermark, a 4-star out of Montvale St. Joe's in New Jersey, 6'5", 295. Kevin Wigginton, 6'5", 295 from the Hun School in Princeton, New Jersey. So Boyd, Vandermark, Wigginton, Baldwin, all of them are 6'5" or taller. Boyd and Baldwin are 6'7". Michigan State's been a little bit low in offensive tackle recruiting in recent years. Boyd and Baldwin give them a chance to do that. Vandermark plays tackle at St. Joe's also. One of those guys can move inside, but some intriguing frames there at the offensive line position. Michigan State needs to recruit well in the offensive line. We all know that. I'm going to go ahead and send out a tweet to invite some more people here. And I know that I appreciate all you guys tuning in and joining us once again, being part of the weekly crowd. And those of you that can't watch live, appreciate you guys joining in and watching also. Now, as far as Mel Tucker's press conference today, he's taking an interesting approach coming off the 49-7 loss. Crankier than he was after the Rutgers game, and for good reason, I would imagine. But an interesting quote that I thought is, he said, quote, "Focusing on the outcome is not what we want right now." He said, "Focusing on the work today and the work it's going to take tomorrow, and what we need to do within this day to improve our technique and fundamentals. How can we play faster? How can we play more physical?" Now, a lot of you people might wonder about that. Wait a minute, what do you mean not worrying about the outcome? Of course you want to win football games. But this is one of the good things about a coach that is not worried about a honeymoon period. He's worried about making progress and chopping wood every day. And he sees that he talks about they've got a lot of work to do and a long way to go. And they've got to be close to mistake-free to beat some of these Big Ten teams on their schedule. And he said, quote, "When you watch the film, sometimes it makes you sick because sometimes it's a basic fundamental. We need to get to where we are fundamentally sound at every position on every play." That's Nick Saban stuff. Nick Saban had 60 guys that were NFL prospects on his roster. Not all of them became NFL players, of course, but they went to Alabama as NFL prospects. And when you've got that kind of depth, the only people that get on the field are the ones that show they can master the fundamentals on every play. And they got to where they were fundamentally sound at every position on every play. And that's what Tucker aspires to achieve. That's what every coach wants to achieve. But Michigan State was leaky against Iowa in so many ways. And it was disappointing, especially coming off a very clean physical game against Michigan. Tucker said, quote, "Today is an awesome opportunity to take a step forward to getting one day better," unquote. He said they added an extra period of individual drills yesterday, quote, "so we could hammer some fundamental things that we need work on." Now, these might sound like macro cliches, but he got into some technical micro things too that I thought were worthwhile. He said, quote, fundamentals, that's where I go. Quote, that's exactly where I go. I go to technique and fundamentals. Then he rattled off a bunch of things like stance, alignment, hand placement, takeoff, all these things that he's looking for. And frankly, he's not seeing, and neither are you, based on a 49-7 game. But it's not like he's just throwing things out there as a figurehead coach. He knows from an evaluation standpoint the way things are supposed to look. And, I've got a good feeling about his ability to chase those down and get them going. I'm surprised about the gap fit problems at the linebacker position. Now, at the defensive back position, there was an expensive play. The shallow crossing route on third. We talked about this. It was 3rd and 7. Michigan State's losing 7-0. 3rd and 7 at the 40-yard line. We talked about this post-game call-in show and also the VCast. Michigan State came with a pressure, I think a 5-man rush, single safety deep, man-to-man, and pass rush didn't get home. Found the shallow crossing route. Easy read, open, gain of 28 yards. I didn't realize at the time that Angelo Gross was the corner in coverage at that time. Basically, the first real plays from scrimmage of the career for Angelo Gross. Coaches are high on him. Physical guy, a football player, as Harlan Barnett says, which is about as good a compliment as Harlan Barnett can give you. And Angelo Gross is going to be a good one, but these were like the first plays he's ever played, other than special teams. And if you look at him on that shallow crossing route, he's running with the receiver, and he kind of hesitates for like a step, and that's all that receiver needed to get like a 5-step advantage on him. Open, turns a corner, gets out. Got a true freshman making an error in coverage. Davion Williams did the same thing in the Rutgers game on a crossing route. Both freshmen looked the same, like they're chasing with the guy, and it's like something goes through their head, like, wait a minute, am I supposed to pass this guy off? We're in man-to-man, right? That's what Gross looked like. That's what Williams looked like. Davion Williams is a sophomore, but guys on the field for the first time, learning, 2 times, shallow crossing route, same situation. So you get that stuff coached up. Those are loose wheels. Those are screws that need to be tightened. That keyed that drive. A couple plays later, it's 14-0. The point is, you got a lot of young players that are learning. Why is he on the field? Because he's shown some good things in practice. But, you want to go with cliches. Nick Saban used to quote Woody Hayes, who used to say, you will lose 1 game for every true freshman that you play. Now, that was a different era in the mid-'70s when, Ohio State was stockpiling 40 recruits a year, and they didn't have to play true freshmen. A few years after the era in which true freshmen were not eligible to play. But the point remains the same. Bill Miller used to say, if you're playing with freshmen, it's like you're whistling through a graveyard because there's a chance something could go wrong. We know that there's plenty of true freshmen that play at a high level at other programs, but even those will blow a tire here and there, make a mistake. Problem is, Michigan State's not a team that can afford many mistakes. I look for Angelo Gross to improve, but that was one of the tone-setting plays that got out on Michigan State a little bit. Fundamentals, technique fits into that category because that's a guy that's got some ability. Let's go to, I'll get back to some things about the press conference here in a moment, or some things about this week's opponent. We'll get into that. As far as, linebackers, Solo Beer guy in Westland also says, are there any potential transfers at all? Well, we talked about the guy from Northern Iowa that was looking at Michigan State and ended up committing to Nebraska. It's my understanding he wanted to go to Michigan State. He was originally from Traverse City, second team All-Missouri Valley Conference as a sophomore at Northern Iowa. It's my understanding that Michigan State told him they would not have a scholarship for him just yet. I think they were talking next semester or the semester after. I'm not sure. Nebraska wanted him right away, scholarship right away. So that's one. I'm not sure that he'd be like a difference maker, but they need warm bodies there at the linebacker position. When you look at, recruiting, I wrote that post today at the Underground Bunker message board looking at linebacker recruiting and why Michigan State's in the predicament that they are in at linebacker. You look at the last 4 or 5 recruiting classes. You go back to 2016, the recruits in 2016 would be the current fifth-year seniors if players stuck around for 5 years from that class. The linebackers did not. Michigan State signed 2 linebackers that year, Joe Bocce and Brandon Randall. Joe Bocce, of course, is done. Brandon Randall entered the transfer portal, transferred to Texas Tech, and he's doing well there. He's playing this year. He's got like 32 tackles in 7 games, 4 pass breakups, 1.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack. Could they use him this year? Somehow, some way, yes. They needed to get his frame, his athleticism, develop it, put it to good use, get it on the field, because right now they've got 3 linebackers. At times last week they had 2 when Antoine Simmons was not ready to go. So that's 2016. You look at 2017, that's when Michigan State signed Antoine Simmons and Noah Harvey. That's 2 of your 3 playing group linebackers right now. Michigan State also signed Darian Clemens. He came in injured, had a severe injury as a high school senior. Michigan State, Hayden Fisher says Randall was arrested Sunday morning. I did not know that. That was probably on the Underground Bunker message board today, probably a reply to my post, and I did not go back and read all the threads. I saw there were a lot of comments in there, but I didn't have a chance to go through it. But, well, that's the latest. I did not know he was arrested. So that puts an interesting twist on things. Thanks for contributing that. But anyway, linebackers, Darian Clemens was injured as a high school senior. Michigan State signed him because that's the way D'Antonio is. You get injured as a senior, he signs you anyway. That also is the case with the running back from Ohio a couple of years ago, Weston Bridges, injured as a senior. Michigan State brought him in anyway. A lot of other places, what's that? Evading arrest on a watercraft. That's what Chris Trinum says about Brandon Randall. Sounds like a James Bond movie a little bit. Anyway, I wish Brandon Randall the best. He was having a pretty good senior season down at Texas Tech. Anyway, so Clemens was hurt and lasted 1 semester at Michigan State, transferred, motor vehicle. Sorry, typo in original. Okay, that makes more sense. Evading arrest in a motor vehicle. I thought you said watercraft. My bad. So, interesting. I got to hope for the best for Brandon Randall for his sake. Anyway, long story short, Clemens lasted a semester, transferred out, was hurt, wasn't quite good enough as a linebacker, went to Eastern Kentucky, played a year. He's no longer on the roster. So they had Simmons and Harvey that year. That's what they have right now. The next year they signed Chase Klein. He's playing this year. Chase Klein, Jess Lord Boateng, don't know where Boateng is. And Ed Warrener. Those were the 3. Klein, Boateng, Warrener. Warrener wasn't fast enough, transferred to Michigan. His dad's coaching there, doing some special teams, but I'm not sure how much he'd be helping if he were still here. Boateng was a guy that I thought would be a slot linebacker in the old system. Now that position is kind of a nickel back, defensive back, safety. So Michigan State's playing 2 linebackers in their 11 rather than 3 true ones. Not sure where that leaves Jess Lord Boateng. Not sure if he can make the transition to be an inside linebacker the way Antoine Simmons has. Antoine Simmons put on about 10 pounds. Last year he played in the slot. They didn't want him in the slot anymore. That was going to be more of a corner type of guy. And good to see Ty Garland checking in. Thanks for sounding off. Good to hear from you also. Ty and I have been texting, trying to get some other things straightened out. We look to hear some more from Ty Garland in the near future. Anyway, Jess Lord Boateng, would have liked to have seen him on the field last week to see what position he's playing. Not sure where he is. I'll be looking for that during pregame this Saturday. We've seen him on special teams. Would he need to add some weight the way Antoine Simmons did to move inside? These are questions we don't know. And again, without a depth chart, we're not real sure. In 2019, Michigan State signed Marcel Lewis, Tate Halleck, and Luke Fulton. Luke Fulton, of course, is suspended right now after a brush with the law. Not good for him. Tate Halleck has been more of a safety, and he is a safety in the current regime. Has not gotten on the field as a safety. Things are competitive there. Could he be a guy that moves down to become more of a box safety, the way Xavier Henderson is playing, the way Michael Dowell is playing? I think that is what Tate Halleck is, maybe the number 3 choice as a box safety right now. And the box safety, it's a safety, but quite frequently you'll see Xavier Henderson down at the linebacker level playing where a linebacker normally would, giving them a traditional front 7 look, Meanwhile, the nickel is out in the slot, not really playing where a traditional linebacker would be. So the box safety is more taking the place of, he's kind of that's more of the 4-2-5 guy in the box, more so than the nickel guy. But it does leave Michigan State with 5 defensive back bodies. The box safety being a bigger guy, Xavier Henderson, 6'2", 210. There's a lot of teams playing with linebackers at that size. And he's doing pretty well, but you have to worry about a wear down process there. And as far as linebacker recruiting last year, Michigan State, or the incoming freshman, Michigan State signed Cal Halliday out of Pennsylvania, Devin Hightower out of Akron, and they listed Josiah Robinson as a linebacker, but now he's listed as a defensive lineman. When he signed with Michigan State, he was listed at 6'3", 230. Now he's 6'1", 245. And then Avery Dunn listed as a linebacker, around 6'4", 235. Probably going to end up being a defensive end. He traveled to Michigan. People wondering about Cole DeMarzo, the kid from Hilton Head, South Carolina, committed as a safety, 6'3", 200. Kind of in that Tate Halleck type of category. Tall, safety. Could he be a box safety? Not sure. But in terms of linebackers, beyond those three, there's just not many bodies. And I've mentioned before that Terry O'Connor, walk-on from Traverse City, traveled with the team to Michigan as part of the travel team. Played a little bit on special teams, but Michigan State thin there at linebacker because linebacker recruiting, player development has not been good in the last 4 years. It's just the truth of the matter. And when I asked Mel Tucker about it today, he kind of didn't really want to say anything disparaging about anybody, but I can say it's obviously a challenge. They're thin at linebacker. Okay, let's see. There's another question from, Sola Beer Guy in Westland. Also wanted to know if there's any possible transfers or what's going on with 2022 recruiting. You look at 2022 recruiting, I've not looked outside of the state of Michigan yet. There's Joshua Burnham from Traverse City Central. He's supposedly a heavy lean to the University of Michigan. We will see if it continues that way. If the dumpster fire at the University of Michigan continues football-wise. But Burnham out of Traverse City Central, considered a Michigan lean. There's also Michael Williams, an interesting one at West Bloomfield High School, 6'3", 230, four-star player, ranked number 9 in Michigan. However, he has sat out this fall with an injury, so I'm not sure what that'll do to his recruiting status, his recruiting stock going into this winter, and hopefully we will see more of a normal off-season with on-campus visits, football camps next summer, and we'll take a look at Michael Williams and see what he's looking like. Also, I'm sure there's some juniors out there that when the film gets processed this fall, they'll land on the radar. But as of now, those are the two in-state ones that we're taking a look at. People are looking at the 2021 class. A lot of people asking about the guy that's committed to USC. Ma'a now Teote out of California, committed to USC. He's very interested in Michigan State. However, Michigan State's not a serious contender there until now Teote gets a chance to visit. Can't visit right now for obvious reasons. Also looking at Chief Border, Chief Border, commitment to the Florida Gators. Michigan State's been in contact with him. I haven't gotten the latest on that from Corey Robinson. I'll have to ask him. I want to shout out Corey Robinson also. Does a great job covering recruiting for us, as does Justin Thin. Great job, Conan Dyke, and the whole cast at SpartanMag.com. Spartan Maggers, all you guys doing a great job making SpartanMag.com a great internet community. It's 9:38 p.m. on Tuesdays. We record this right now, so the special over there at the Big Ten Network, From the Banks of the Red Cedar documentary about the great things Michigan State did in the mid-1960s, college football, and the things they did forwarding progress in the category of desegregation. Just great, something for Michigan State people to just be tremendously proud of. And I didn't see it. I forgot it was on today, and I pressed record when somebody on the message board mentioned it, and it occurred to me. So I went and pressed record at about 8:58 just before I came on the air here. And I looked through the next 2 days real quickly to see when it airs again. And I didn't see a time that it's going to air. So if someone can tell me when that thing's going to air again, I would love to watch the first half hour. I watched about 45 seconds of it, and it was really hard for me not to sit down and watch the rest of it and delay the beginning of this until 9:30. But I'd already said we're going to start at 9 o'clock. But those of you that we're seeing more people come in now, I'm sure a lot of you watched it. Let me know what you thought about it. I'm sure that a lot of you really enjoyed that. And it's really an intriguing, fascinating time. Michigan State was so awesome back then. They're trying to become awesome again. All right. Question from Ward 44, parts unknown. He says the basketball season starts in about 2 weeks. Are we going to get any in-depth breakdowns and info on how the team is progressing so far in practice? In-depth breakdowns, that would require SpartanMag.com being able to go watch practice. And when practice is open, I'm your guy. And I've been your guy for more than 25 years. But for obvious reasons, we're not allowed to go watch practice right now. With COVID going on, nobody can watch practice. Nobody's allowed in the building. I'm hoping they allow us to go to basketball games, home games, when they begin, if they begin. But practice, there's no. You're asking for in-depth breakdowns. I'd love to tell you how Joey Hauser's looking, or Marcus Bingham, what kind of progress he's making. All that we get is what Izzo tells us. And right now, Izzo's going through his own situations. We know that, and we wish him the best, and hope he's getting some rest. Hope he's doing okay. Everybody's rooting for him. No question about that. Tomorrow, as we record this, is basketball signing day, so there's going to be a press conference of sorts tomorrow. I'm kind of hoping Dwayne Stevens runs that. He deserves to. He does a great job in recruiting. So we'll see. Usually when that's going on, they don't take any questions about how things are looking in practice. But with this year being so different, hopefully we can get some updates. That being said, the coaches, including Izzo, they like to fan the flames of fan interest, but they don't want to give away too much information to the opposition, scouting, coaches. So now everybody is practicing in complete private. Nothing's getting out there media-wise. No exhibition games. So basically, you're asking for in-depth breakdowns. It's not happening. As much as I'd like to, I can't really sneak in and watch practice. We do continue to hear good things about Joshua Langford, and that's good for him. And now Izzo's going to be putting more, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but more expectation on the Joshua Langford to become more and more of a leader. Now, he has everybody's respect in that locker room. He's never been much of a talker as a rah-rah guy. He talks to the guys a lot about their lives and spirituality, and they love him. Now can he turn the dial up in terms of football or basketball leadership there? That's what Izzo wants. All right, let's take a look here at the chat area. MM Drippy checking in. Rob South. Cartero 917. Mr. Boneman all saying hello. Old Tuck, the bell cow, is here. It's a pretty good starting lineup. MM Drippy at the small forward. Rob South at the point. Boneman, power forward. Cartero 917, your shooting guard. And Old Tuck in the pivot. Remember when they used to call it the pivot? Old Tuck down low. So what we got there is like a 4-guard perimeter. 4-around-1 with Old Tuck in the middle. Pretty good starting lineup. Sam Cooper, comp. Who could we be looking at to commit next? Wow. You know, those dominoes that just fell. Some of those guys were kind of low-hanging fruit. As far as 2021, Michigan State, all the rumors about Michigan State working on Andrell Anthony, the wide receiver out of East Lansing, that's true. Could something happen there in the near future? I don't know. I don't know what his timeline might be. Stephen Johnson was on the cusp for a long time. Brandon Baldwin was on the cusp for a while. Rayshawn Benny for a long time. Michigan State continues to talk to Keon Coleman, the kid from Louisiana. possibility there. Ruquan Buckley out of Godwin Heights, Michigan, originally planned to decide on October 14th, has delayed that. Nebraska wants him. He's a two-way lineman. Would be an interesting one. But right now, I don't have a real good answer on that. I'm not sure if Michigan State's going full blast with Buckley. I think Michigan State kind of is, but I know he really liked Nebraska too. So good question. We'll have to ask Corey Robinson on that and see what he thinks. Sticking here in the chat area, Mr. Bowman says, Rico said that Rocky is hurt. What do you know about that? Well, he was limping around and had a brace on one of his knees, I think it was, in the second half. I don't know how bad it is. Seemed to finish under his own power. Didn't play in the final possession. They put Peyton Thorne in there. It's a blowout situation. But I also know he's a wrestler and he's tough. And I've not heard anything about, how hurt he is other than being banged up, and he is banged up. But I don't think it's anything that would, at this point, threaten his availability on Saturday unless something happens this week in practice. When he left that game at Iowa, didn't look like there was anything severe to me unless there were problems that surfaced afterward that they took another look at, and sometimes those things can creep up. You take an x-ray and you've got a problem. I've not heard anything like that. But if Rico knows something, maybe he'll reach out to us and let us know. Or maybe he'll say it on his show. You probably heard him on his show. Did he make it sound like he's questionable for this week or something? I've not heard that. Old Tuck from Austin, Texas says D'Antonio stopped the run in 95% of his games. What has changed this year besides some personnel? Well, that is a great question. Great question. What did Iowa run for? 220 yards? 225? 230? They've changed their scheme, not only going with 2 linebackers on the field and 5 defensive backs. That's a big part of it. They've changed some of their, they used to be more of a 1-gapping team with a little bit of 2-gapping. Now, I don't know, I've not charted it, but it might be 50-50. When you're 2-gapping, the linebackers do not have necessarily a designated gap that they're following. They might have 2 gaps that they're looking at, and it's a read and react thing with backfield flow. And when you bring in more read and reaction, you got more processing, and you've got some guys that are reacting slower, not getting there, getting carved out of their gap, guessing wrong, jumping out of their gap. I don't want to say guessing wrong, reading wrong. We saw that on the 70-yarder. Iowa's first play of the second half. Also saw it on Iowa's first and third touchdown. The first touchdown was a 3rd and goal when they ran off left tackle. Noah Harvey was flowing with it, and there's a gap that he could have shot through, but he kind of took it further into the log jam at the point of attack, trying to log jam it over there when he probably could have shot the gap and accelerated and maybe tried to backdoor that thing. It's a difficult one because I think in the past, if you've got a gap, you shoot it, but if he's responsible for like a gap and a half kind of, did he want to get there and turn it back in the way they used to? Or they used to want to bounce it and get it to the sideline. Now they want to set the edge, build a wall, bring it back in. I talked about that in the post-game show, that the best that I've seen do it was TCU a few years ago. Gary Patterson, one of the fathers of the 4-2-5, and he's able to stop the run in a 4-2-5. Now, that was back when TCU was Mountain West / Big 12. But one of the games that I studied was when they beat Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl in 2011. And they were a 4-2-5 with smallish guys, but they had, I think his name was Tank Carter, inside linebacker, and he would have tackled that play that Iowa ran, the first touchdown. He would have shot that daylight, chased it down from inside out, tackled in the backfield. That's what he did against Wisconsin most of the day. Wisconsin started running well at the end of the game with some gap plays, but in terms of their zone plays, TCU pursued that thing inside out and stopped it. Now, could that TCU team have done that in the Big Ten week after week after week? Back then, there were more physical teams in the Big Ten between the tackle running attacks. Now there's fewer of those, but no question, Iowa is one, obviously, that will load up with 2 tight ends or maybe 1 tight end and 2 backs, put you in a phone booth and knock you back. or put you in a phone booth and run zone to the outside and create some cutback lanes. So, what's changed with run defense? Well, I tell you what, Michigan State, frankly, in a 4-2-5, they've decided to put more emphasis on stopping the pass, the RPO, the slot area, feeling that they can also stop the run with numbers. So with 6 in the front 6, 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, a lot of times against Iowa, when they go 2 tight ends, Michigan State would bring in a box safety like we talked about. They did that against Rutgers, did that against Michigan. And then the 5th defensive back, the nickel, is out giving more attention to the slot area than Michigan State ever has before. Michigan State might go man-to-man in the slot area in the red zone or when protecting a late lead through the air. But for the most part, Michigan State, back in the D'Antonio era, would have Antoine Simmons type of linebacker out there in the slot area, but not all the way out in the slot area. Would be playing off and more to the box to stop the run first. And if the offense threw a bubble screen or a quick hitch, then the linebacker would react to it. And that was the soft spot of the Michigan State defense. Throwing to that free release slot, that was the soft spot of the Michigan State defense. That's what, Baylor threw 16 or 17 times to the free release slot in the Cotton Bowl back in 2015. And it used to drive a lot of fans crazy that Michigan State used to give up that, be so soft against the pass and give up 300 yards passing to the likes of Western Michigan. Well, the reciprocal of that is Michigan State was predicated on stopping the run. Narduzzi believed in it. D'Antonio believed in it. They felt the number one thing was stop the run, react to the rest of the stuff. And if teams can complete those passes, not have any dropped passes, inaccurate passes, penalties, and if they do, they drive it into the red zone. Don't give up any big plays. Stop the run. Get in the red zone. Stop them there. Make them kick field goals. Didn't always work, but that was the theory. And Baylor was a tremendous offense that year. They invented the RPO. Art Briles invented the RPO. And it was brand new then, and they were outstanding on offense. They blew a lot of people out. But Michigan State made them attempt 3 or 4 field goals, which is way more than they had in any other game all year. They still scored 40-some points. Michigan State came back and won in a thrilling victory. One of the more delicious victories of the D'Antonio era. Anyway, that's the most extreme example I can think of to where Michigan State was stopping the run, but allowing the pass. It's not like you allow the pass, but whatever you're going to do, you're going to be weak somewhere, especially in the RPO game, where they're reading that overhang defender, and if you're playing the run, they throw it. And if you're playing the pass, they hand it off. So, Michigan State has made the philosophical change that they want to stop the pass. They don't want to be weak against the pass. They feel they can also stop the run by bringing a box linebacker down, box safety. So Michigan State used to have 4-3. Antoine Simmons, more recently, would be in the slot. And Michigan State would still play 2 deep safeties. The 2 deep safeties weren't really deep. They were pretty shallow for safeties, but their base was a 2 deep. Sometimes if they blitzed, they'd go to cover 3 and go 3 deep. But for the most part, 2 deep safeties. And when you have 2 deep safeties, you're keeping an eye on the run. They're supporting the run. They're also doing a good job of making sure no plays get out for big plays, whether it be over the top or run plays. Well, instead of 2 deep safeties, now you've got one of those safeties in as a box linebacker, giving Michigan State a traditional 4-3 look when Iowa goes with 2 tight ends or 2 backs. So it still looks like 4-3, and Michigan State has put a nickel linebacker over there in the slot. You've only got 11 players. So rather than 2 deep, it's 1 deep. So if something breaks, it's got a much better chance to get out and go for 70 yards, like you saw on Saturday. Or the quarterback lead draw for Rutgers that went for a 25-yard touchdown. Because there's more open greenery back there. Because Michigan State has deployed one of the safeties into the box and to make up for a linebacker that's deployed out in the slot. So Michigan State feels that they can still stop, theoretically on the chalkboard, the defense can stop the run with those 7, but you need your linebackers to not hesitate and to be able to read that backfield flow, identify their gap, shoot their gap like Tank Carter did at TCU, and get it done. Some of that is recruiting, player development. Some of that is the 10,000-hour rule. You need to be in the system for 10,000 hours, like Mark D'Antonio said. So Noah Harvey can play football, but I'm seeing a guy that's not near the 10,000-hour rule to play that the way they'd like it played. They're working on it. Antoine Simmons has made a quicker transition to it. Noah Harvey, a good kid. He's trying. You asked me, why is Michigan State not stopping the run? And D'Antonio's teams almost always did. That's a big reason why. And that's not the last time that's going to happen. Teams are going to run the ball. The days of Michigan State being a top 10 run defense, I think, are over. Now, TCU really stopped the run really well. But like I said, they did that in the early era when they first got back into the Big 12. But a lot of that was when they were in the Mountain West also. Here's the other problem. When you've got Xavier Henderson in there as a box safety, he's 210 pounds, but he is a safety frame-wise. He added some weight during the 5 or 6 weeks of strength and conditioning that Michigan State did. But you see him in the box, setting the edge, taking on pulling offensive linemen, taking on a blocking back. Not every team's going to have a blocking back. Michigan did with Ben Mason. I think that's his name. The kid from out east, from New Hampshire, I think. Anyway. And Iowa had a real good hammerhead blocking back, but the 2 tight ends really could block. So Xavier Henderson is out there taking on lead blockers, spilling it, not to make the tackle, but just to log jam the thing. That's a linebacker job. That's a square-shouldered, Massillon, Ohio linebacker job. Now, he's a Pickerington guy. He can play, but he's a safety. And I was watching him take some blows in the Iowa game, and I'm like, man, there's another one. And I'm wondering how many of those plays a safety can do in a 12-game season. Now, not every team's going to play like Iowa. And I'm wondering about Iowa. I mean, they could be 3-0. I don't know what's remaining on their schedule. But, there was a belief at Wisconsin, there was a belief in the previous Michigan State staff that the more that teams went to the RPO game and the spread game, the more that teams that didn't go that route were more of a knuckleball. 2 tight ends like Michigan, like Iowa's doing under center, lead plays, zone lead, split zone. It makes them the new unorthodox type of team. And question was, well, okay, that's well and good, but are you going to be able to score with some of these other teams anyway? I don't know. That stuff's all being shaken out, but Iowa looked pretty good on offense against Michigan State's 4-2-5. On Saturday, Michigan State believes they can stop that on the chalkboard in theory, and Tucker was talking about, he says, hey, he said in the press conference today, we do not have an unsound defense. We're not out, not his words, but not out on a trapeze without a net. They're not selling out with risk to be unsound somewhere else. They've, like D'Antonio, they feel that they've got everything accounted for. Now, I think the ice is thinner because you've got 1 safety deep most of the time rather than 2. I mean, they'll play quarters also. They'll play some 2 deep and 4 deep. They'll mix all those things in. They played Tampa, too, against Michigan a lot. So, they change it up. They're not always single safety deep, but they certainly are more so than Michigan State, and they are in their base. More than Michigan State was last year, and they are in their base. But I wonder about Xavier Henderson taking those hammer shots. Now, Indiana's good, but they're not going to hammer you like that. It won't be as physical of a day for Xavier Henderson. Penn State, I'm thinking about who else is on the schedule. Northwestern, they'll dink it around and stuff. So, Iowa is probably the last team that Michigan State's going to face that'll really hammer them like that. Xavier Henderson took a couple of possessions off, and Michael Dowell played that box safety role. He's got linebacker size too. And so Michigan State's made that commitment, that philosophical decision to go with a 4-2-5. And they think on the chalkboard they can have a good run defense, but I'm not expecting top 10 run defenses. But, in those years, Michigan State often in pass defense would rank in the 60s. I would point out that Michigan State in the pass defense, although they might rank 60 or 50, they might rank in the 30s in yards per pass attempt, which is the most important passing stat. Yards per pass attempt, not how many yards you give up. Anyway, there's a big question And I've answered that a few times in the last 4 days, and I have a feeling it won't be the last time. All right, let's take a look here. All right, Brad from Mooresville, North Carolina says, sorry, Jim, if I missed this question last week. He says, you predicted that Michigan State this year would sign 6 or so 4-star recruits with Mel Tucker's first recruiting class. You predicted that in the spring. Are you still holding on that number, or do you care to amend? Yeah, that was in the spring when we thought there'd be some kind of recruiting, face-to-face recruiting camps. I thought he had some good people at his camps. We didn't know if there'd be camps back then. There weren't. Michigan State right now has 4 4-star guys, but no, I wouldn't think 6 anymore. I'm thinking they might add 1 more. The 4-star recruits they have right now are Rayshawn Benny, Audric Estime, the running back from New Jersey, Gino Vandermark, the offensive lineman from New Jersey, and Charles Brantley, the defensive back from Venice, Florida. Back then when I made that prediction, I thought Michigan State was going to get Jamari Budden, the linebacker from Belleville who's committed to Penn State. Back then I wasn't sure that they would get Rayshawn Benny. I thought he'd be going to Michigan. Corey Robinson thought that Michigan State would be in it for Benny for the long haul. He was right. Any chance Michigan State can flip Budden or maybe one of those other Detroiters that are committed to Penn State, I suppose it's possible, especially if Penn State gets into a dumpster fire situation this year. I think Penn State is 0-3. I know they're 0-3. They're playing Nebraska this weekend. That's 0-3 versus 0-2. It's like a loser leave town match. So Penn State, are things getting cranky there? Not yet. But I thought Michigan State would have a chance at Budden. So I'm going to amend that from 6 down to 5. I have a feeling they're just going to get someone else. I don't know who that might be. The kid from California, maybe. I'm not sure he's actually a 4-star guy, to be honest with you. Looks like he's got a little bit of that Shane Jones. And he needs to be faster, to put it one way. All right, when you talk about 4-star recruits, last year Michigan State only had 2. So Michigan State's already got 4, twice as many as last year. The year before, Michigan State had 4. The year before that, they had 5. The year before that, they had 4. So Michigan State's not had 6 or more 4-star recruits since the 2016 class, which was ranked high, but ended up being a disaster. Question number 5 from Sparty in Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Says, hey, Jim, wondering if you've noticed any changes in the football players' strength and conditioning since Novak took over. Loved Coach Manny, but wondering what impact Novak has had, if any. I mentioned Xavier Henderson is bigger. They've made him bigger to be a box safety. Antoine Simmons is bigger because they moved him from the slot to inside linebacker. Noah Harvey's bigger. And he's running okay, and when he hits, he brings it with some force. Just needs to improve his ability to know where to go. Mel Tucker talks about wanting to be a smart team that plays fast. They need that, especially in the middle of the defense, especially with Noah Harvey. Jack Camper doesn't look real big, but I noticed him against Iowa. He was one guy that was not getting pushed around at defensive end, was taking on some good tight end blocking, was setting the edge a few times. Not a guy that gets off and makes plays a whole lot, but at point of attack, he's been stronger than his size. And that was certainly a good test from Iowa. And I'll say this, I was talking about this in the post-game press conference and the post-game call-in show and the VCast. Went back and watched the game again, and I'm hoping to put some film study stuff about this on the Underground Bunker message board later this week. For instance, I'll go back to that 70-yard run, first play of the second half for Iowa on offense. Their first offensive play. Bust out for 70 yards. And you might look at it and say, man, they're just blowing us off the ball. But again, that was a gap misfit. And if you have a guy out of a gap, then, like I say, you might as well be playing with 10 on defense instead of 11. Because if a guy's out of his gap, the Nick Saban rule, Nick Saban would rather have a barrel on the field than you, because at least the barrel's going to be where it's supposed to be. There's a chance the running back might run into the barrel and fall down. But if you're not where you're supposed to be, it's daylight. My point for this is, then I went back and watched it again. First play of the second half, Michigan State's D-line, all 4 of them are 2 gapping. All 4 of them are firm. All 4 of them they're not being displaced at all. 1 or 2 of the guys are actually moving the offensive lineman back a half yard or a foot. So the 4 defensive linemen on that play were all physically firm and fine. So you might look at it and say, man, we are getting blown off the ball. Wasn't the case on that play. Wasn't the case. Michigan State's in one safety look, and you got a gap misfit, and the guy's untouched. And nobody was beaten physically. It was just a run fit. So, now there were other times when guys did get beat physically. Drew Beasley, I saw him get beat a couple times physically. I haven't seen that in the first 2 games. Tucker was talking about let's set the edge and build a wall. A lot of times you set the edge there at the defensive end position. Against Iowa, it's against a tight end. And like I noticed one play, second drive, it was a 2nd and 6. And, Iowa only gained like 8 yards. But, Beasley was a play side defensive end on a pin and pull. And he's taking on a tight end. D'Antonio used to talk about the importance of controlling the C gap. That's defensive end against tight end. That's C gap. And here's the tight end for Iowa, and here's Beasley. And the tight end moved him, and there's a lot of space. It turns the corner, gains about 7-8 yards. And, and that was one of the plays where the pin and pull and guards pulling, and Xavier Henderson up there as the box safety takes on the pull guard. Bam. I'm like, God. That hurt my head just watching that. Because Henderson at 210, taking on a 300-pounder on the move. Physical over and over and over. Over the course of time, offensive linemen are going to win that. So anyway, Beasley, and I saw one other time when he got moved off. Oh, it was a touchdown, and Dan Orlovsky, the color commentator, mentioned that Alaric Jackson, the left tackle for Iowa, pancaked Beasley. He didn't mention Beasley by name, but Beasley was the defensive end. And that created a gap or created some space, but it really wasn't that block that got it done. Again, it was a run fit. That time it was Chase Klein not getting in his gap and being influenced this way. Guy walks in for a touchdown. Now, if Beasley does not get pancaked, maybe he can squeeze that gap a little bit, create some traffic. And if he's a plus player, he can get off that block and make a tackle. That's a plus play. But he was pancaked on that one. Beasley, I went back and watched it again, and I thought he had some decent moments physically at other times of the game. It's not like he was getting destroyed every single time. But it only takes a couple, and you've got a touchdown drive, and it's 21-0. Then you get punt return touchdown, pick 6, and it's 35. You guys know that. Slade, I thought, was okay physically. Once or twice he got moved. Naquan Jones, it was his worst game in terms of losing at the line of scrimmage. And I mentioned in the pre-snap read that Iowa's guard, their center right guard, when they double team, they were really good with their double teams against Purdue and Northwestern. Hadn't seen anybody really stand up to them. And Michigan State, when those guys double teamed, no one at Michigan State really withstood that. When they ran like an inside zone right, center right guard getting a double team. I can't think of their names right now, but the center right guard, the center starts with a V. I think it's a Greek name. I don't know. But, the right guy is Malmart or something like that. He's not bad. Those two together in tandem, their double team block was hard to withstand. Against a double team, a quality defensive tackle can stand up a double team and not budge. And if you're doing that and taking up 2 blockers and not getting displaced, that gives your defensive front 7 a +1 if one guy can do that. And, Slade's pretty good at that. Naquan Jones has been pretty good at that. But Naquan Jones, not only against those 2 double teams, but also one-on-one and some other times, Naquan Jones did not have his best game. Needs to be more physical. Deshaun Mallory came in, and he was physical. Hard to displace, which is a big, hefty guy at 340 or whatever it is. Not a big surprise there. He's shown that most of the year. What Mallory showed in this game that he had not shown in other games was ability to disengage, cross-face, and make a play. And then there's one time on an outside zone where he ran laterally with his gap and got in and gummed it up. I can't remember if he made a tackle or not, but I was like, man, I didn't know Mallory could move like that. So you're asking about strength and conditioning. Mallory, conditioning-wise, I didn't know he could move like that. I watched him in practice a little bit last year. I was like, that guy looks different. Maybe it was the year before in the VCast. Conan Dyke and I were talking about it. I'm like, Mallory is a different sized telephone booth human being. I'm like, I don't know what that's going to mean, but he looks different. Well, now you're seeing him move his feet. That's a rare combination. So Mallory was okay. You're asking about other strength and conditioning gains. They only had like 5 or 6 legitimate weeks of a strength and conditioning program. So a lot of these guys, the players did improve. They were better than they were physically in August, in September when they came back cold. But and they're still doing some lifting now, but it's tough to add right now. So nothing too demonstrative right now in that category. Let's go back here to the chat area. Mr. Bowman says, you guys watch Through the Red Cedar? It's pretty good. I mentioned that earlier. I hope it re-airs again sometime soon. Chris Trainham, Mall 286 checking in from soon to be locked down Philadelphia. Hayden Fisher says, you should check out fans on Twitter, Comp. It's wild what some of these people are saying. Oh, you're talking about the people that are upset about Michigan State not being able to battle with the big boys? You know what, man? I get on Twitter and I follow media people, sports writers, athletes, coaches. What fans are saying, I'm oblivious to it. And some people get into those Twitter threads and see what people are saying back and forth. I don't read it. And people tweet about me or, say, I put tweets out. I probably should tweet more. But I put out tweets and people respond to it. I don't read it. I tweet out, but I don't have any tweet intake. I don't read it. I don't know what fans are saying on Twitter. I look to see what I use it as a news feed, but I guess I didn't know that's what fans are saying. But that's Exhibit A. That why be bothered with that? I mean, I'm sure a lot of those people are good people and good fans, and some might even be subscribers. But I ain't got time for that. I mean, if they think Michigan State should be playing with the big boys right now, and you're asking earlier, why is it? Well, I mean, D'Antonio's success has done that. I mean, there's people, if you're 30 and under right now, you're expecting that, and you think that Michigan State should be like LSU, Alabama, Florida. LSU's not LSU this year, and that's okay to expect that, but don't freak out about it. And if people are that much of an expert that they should demand that their team be that great, then they should also be able to turn on the film and look at it and see that the material's not there to be that. I mean, you can go to the pumpkin patch and wait all fall every single year like Michigan does that the great pumpkin's going to come down and give presents to all the girls and boys. And it never happens, but Linus Harbaugh leads the people there every year, and everybody believes it. Everybody goes there like Sally, and they wait for it to happen again. Sally's more of a cynic, though, or she's more skeptical. She's more of a skeptic. Again, I'm surprised more Michigan fans are not like Sally. Let's see. Rob South says, Hayden, I literally left Spartan groups on Facebook for that exact reason. These people say things to get a reaction. I don't get it. So I'm oblivious to this. Maybe I should know more about these things, but I don't. And honestly, I mean, I don't have time to go in there and try to explain things to people. The explaining we do is at the Underground Bunker message board, and it's not really explaining. It's just observations, cutting in deep to what's going wrong, why it's going wrong, what are the chances it's going to get corrected anytime soon. That's where we are right now. I try to do it clinically and unemotionally. That's what we do in our particular news organization. But Spartan fan groups on Facebook, I don't know anything about it. Tom Coyle says, quote, he got a little grouchy, which I appreciated, quote. Comp is the best, Coyle says. Appreciate that. Detroit Spartan says, Harvey's a big, powerful kid, but he's had a rough fall from a mental standpoint. I'm rooting for him. I like Noah Harvey. He's got the ability to do it. I don't know. We'll see. Peyton Fleetmeyer says, start Peyton Thorne. I've never seen him play. I saw him hand it off 3 times and do a counter boot pass. He missed the tight end on that one by a foot. Incomplete, 4th down, turn it over, didn't get the ball back. That's all I've ever seen of Peyton Thorne. Didn't see him in the green-white game. Didn't see him in practice last year. I saw his high school film. But me thinking that he should start, I've got nothing other than fairy tale hopes and my age-old axiom that the unknown is undefeated. The unknown is Peyton Thorne And because he's not played, it's an unknown. And because he's not played, it's undefeated. Rocky Lombardi was unknown or undefeated at one time. So was Damian Terry. Damian Terry was the answer. Remember that? Before he played. Chris Trinum says, was Fofanoti the last JUCO player that transferred into Michigan State? In terms of a scholarship player, it's the last one I can think of. Chris Trinum says, I know in the past we looked at the Swedish kid that ended up at Purdue. Due to clearinghouse issues, he went to Purdue. Miguel Machado was the last JUCO. He was not great, says Doors Fan 91. Yeah, both offensive linemen. Thanks, Doors Fan, on that one. Chris Trinum says, I forgot about that one. I did too. Trinum says, yes, JUCOs are always a mixed bag. Bummer that he didn't pan out. Smitty Rock says, according to the up-down theory, we win this Saturday. The up-down theory. I like the up-down theory. Other theories include the sandwich theory. It's a sandwich game for Indiana, right? Because Indiana just had a big win over Michigan, the first time they've beaten Michigan since 300 BC. So they beat Michigan. Now they play Ohio State next week. They got Michigan State in the middle, in the sandwich. And cliches come about because they happen a lot. Not all the time, but Michigan State is the sandwich game. It helps a little bit. So what is Indiana doing? Well, I saw a quote from their press conference yesterday from Caleb Jones, offensive lineman. He said, quote, Indiana offensive lineman. He said, quote, we have a grudge against Michigan State. We should have won last year, unquote. I don't doubt that. They probably should have won. There was like a play on a punt. There was a punt penalty that really turned that game. And if that penalty had not happened, it was like a very favorable call for Michigan State. And Tom Allen, the coach for Indiana, was not happy with that. And if that call didn't happen, Michigan State, I think, would have lost the game. Michigan State rallied, won the game. Hard-fought victory. Made Michigan State's record look better. Got them to 6-6. Indiana ended up, what, 9-3? And then they had, they're 8-4. Then they had Tennessee beat in the bowl game up by like 9 or 10 or 11. Gave up a touchdown, onside kick, touchdown, lost. Had Tennessee beat for 55 minutes. Should have won that game. Should have beaten Michigan State. Should have, could have, would have. Indiana last year was real close to being a 10-3 team. And by the way, Indiana right now is 3-0, ranked number 10 in the country. Indiana in the top 10 for the first time since 1969. They've beaten Penn State, Michigan, and Rutgers. You guys know that. But Indiana, in their last 10 Big Ten games, their last 10 conference games, what's Indiana's record? 8-2. 8-2. And I think one of those losses might have been that Michigan State one. Which, here's my point. Caleb Jones. We have a grudge against Michigan State. He didn't make that up. That's what the coaches are telling him. To their credit, the coaches are telling him that. That is the psychological motivation that Coach Tom Allen in Indiana is using for his players this week so they can avoid the sandwich thing. Yeah, we just beat Michigan for the first time since 300 BC, and we got Ohio State next week. Guys, we got a grudge against Michigan State for the old brass spittoon. The old brass spittoon. The border skirmish, Michigan State and Indiana. The border skirmish is going to be good. Indiana's number 10 in the country, and they are good. Tom Allen, to his credit, manufacturing some angst, manufacturing a grudge match. We should have won last year. Well, I don't know if Michigan State uses that for bulletin board material. Michigan State does not need any bulletin board material. Michigan State needs a screwdriver, and they need to tighten up a bunch of screws and worry about the damn selves, and they know that. So, Indiana, I was zipping through that Indiana-Michigan game last night, and, man, Indiana on offense was impressive in the first half. impressive. I think they went for like 300 yards passing or 300 yards total offense in the first half, and just surgical. And Penix, the quarterback, arm, like Mel Tucker said today, he's got the arm to make passes outside the numbers and make it work for him, which means he can make all the throws. To use Mel Tucker's quote, Mel Tucker described Michael Penix Jr. as a, quote, difference maker at quarterback. Difference maker. And that's not just coach speak. Tucker really believes it, and Penix really is a difference maker. Good passer. Strong arm, averaging 250 yards passing per game, completing 59% of his passes, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. Interesting quote from Tucker about Penix, saying that Penix does a great job of just surveying things, getting them into the right play. They'll do some RPO stuff, but decisions. He's got the talent, the arm strength and all that, can run it a little bit, doesn't choose to a whole lot, but decisions, can make a read, can process the information. Nice quarterback. Stevie Scott, big tailback for Indiana, 6'2", 231. Tailback, 6'2", 231. Averaging 78 yards rushing per game, 3.6 yards per carry. Had 97 yards rushing against Michigan on 24 carries. The backup running back, Sampson's a big dude, 6'1", 220. So Indiana's got like 4 receivers, throwing it around, flipping it around with good wide receivers, but they combine that with a big running back, whether Scott's in the game or Sampson. But the receivers, you guys know who those guys are. You remember Whop Philyor, number 1 for Indiana, 5'11", 180 out of Tampa, 2-star recruit, had offers from Syracuse, Maryland, Louisville, Iowa State, Virginia Tech, probably should have been ranked higher, had some good recruiting interest. And Tom Allen's done a good job recruiting in that Tampa area. Whop Philyor's from Tampa, Michael Penix Jr.'s from Tampa. Philyor this year, averaging 7 catches per game. It's kind of like a possession plus guy, possession game breaker, deep a little bit. And then Ty Freifogel, 13 catches, 6'2", 215. Lucedale, Mississippi, another 2-star from the South. Offers from Ole Miss and Idaho. That's pretty much it. Indiana got him. Miles Marshall, the other wide receiver, 6'4", 208. He's from Georgia. He was a 3-star. He has 7 catches on the year. Had a circus catch touchdown against Michigan. I was like, who the hell is that dude? 6'4", 208. Miles Marshall. This is Indiana. And then the tight end, Hendershot's got 3 touchdown catches this year. You got the quarterback back there with time to throw, and he's just throwing darts. He's just dealing. And it's a good operation. And they're good. You got to be hoping that... All right, so Michigan State, I got to watch it a little bit more. I've not watched their game against Penn State. But if you're Michigan State, you got to be hoping that Michigan State's strength is their coverages and ability to change coverages like they did against Michigan. Maybe they can cover. Maybe they can cover these receivers, change the things a little bit. This dude, Penix, has only had 1 interception. Maybe you can coax him into a less than average day. You have to hope that their strength, the passing game, matches up with your strength, pass defense. Can Michigan State get any pass rush to go with it? I don't know. There's a chance that Michigan State might match up better with Indiana's style of play on offense than they did against Iowa. You have to hope so. Iowa went for 35 points against Michigan State. I know you're saying 49, but 35 against the offense. There's a kick return and a pick 6. 35 against the defense. Probably could have had more. But Mel Tucker, interestingly, noted that Indiana on defense rotates 17 players in their front 7. Yeah, their defense, they held Michigan to something like 15 yards rushing. 15 yards rushing. Michigan, 13 yards rushing. Michigan had 42 yards in gains, 29 in losses, 13 net yards rushing. The Wolverines, who rushed for like 3 miles against the Gophers, rushed for 13 yards against the Indiana defense. It's one thing for Indiana to have a quarterback. He was a 4-star quarterback from Tampa. Florida State liked him. Not sure how Indiana made that happen, but they made it happen. And how about Indiana hiring Tom Allen? Came in and coached 1 game after Kevin Wilson was fired for being too mean to people. He was defensive coordinator for Wilson, interim coach. Somebody made a brilliant decision to elevate him to be head coach. He's an Indiana guy that had some Florida recruiting connections, and that's looking really smart right now. All right, anyways, maybe I was talking about that game too much. Let's go back to the mailbag. Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina has another question. He says, also, it looks like Coach Juwan Howard at Michigan has gotten a few 5-stars of late. Do you think when it's all said and done, will they be able to hold on to the number one basketball recruiting class? Michigan right now is the number one basketball recruiting class. Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina says, or with Imani Bates possibly reclassifying, will Michigan State overtake them? I don't know. I imagine if Michigan State gets Bates, adds him to Max Christie, Jaden Akins, Pierre Brooks. If Bocce reclassifies, I got to believe Michigan State's number one and Michigan's number two. And that makes for some interesting fodder, right? I've not paid a lot of attention to it, but, Michigan got the guy Caleb Houston, 6'8", I think out of IMG in Florida, top 15 player. I've not seen these guys play because there was no, I would have had to have watched them the year before. I didn't notice them the year before. There were no camps this summer. I mean, there's a few here and there, but EYBL was canceled. So in the old days, I used to go to the Nike camp and see a lot of these guys and have a better frame of reference. I'll probably have to go watch some of his highlights. I don't like to watch. I mean, highlights give you some idea, but I'd rather watch like a whole game because I want to see the guy, how many shots does he have to attempt to make the shots you see in a highlight film. But Houston's supposed to be good. They got Kobe Buffkin, a guy that I like out of Grand Rapids. Michigan State could have gotten him, but they didn't have room for all of them. Buffkin's ranked number 60 in the country. This guy, Frankie Collins, 6'1" point guard, ranked number 73 out of Nevada. I don't know anything about him. Isaiah Barnes, 6'6", Chicago Simeon, ranked number 112. I don't know anything about him. Will Shetter out of Minnesota, 6'8", 225, ranked number 147. I don't know anything about him. I've not taken time to go look at their film. I mean, I like Christie, Akins, Brooks, Bocce, and Bates. It's fun. Juwan Howard, it'll make it fun. So I don't care. I'm glad you do, though. That's good. WM Spartan says, Jim, what are your thoughts on the Big Ten East going forward the next few years? It seems like the decline of supposed blue bloods should favor Michigan State's future hopes, even if some historically lower-end programs, such as Indiana and Rutgers, rise. Similarly, it should be easier to compete against Rutgers, Indiana, and Maryland in recruiting than it is against the historical programs when they're clicking on full cylinders. Thoughts? Great, well-worded question, and it is interesting what's going on in the Big Ten East. Michigan, some flat tires going on there. They lose to Wisconsin. I don't know. I mean, a lot of Michigan fans are already looking to move on. I don't know. Michigan's recruiting is going to get hurt a little bit. I mean, they lost Rayshawn Benny. They'll lose some others. They're not going to recruit like Lloyd Carr used to recruit, or even Rich Rodriguez, believe it or not. Rutgers rise. I mean, if Rutgers keeps players in New Jersey, they'll be a better team. I don't know who that's going to hurt. That might hurt Penn State a little bit. Penn State 0-3. If they lose to Nebraska, Penn State still has to play Michigan. I don't know who else they have. Michigan State. I'm not sure. But Penn State, they're 0-3. I know they lost Micah Parsons. They don't have Journey Brown. But it's surprising me the problems they're having. And I've not closely watched their games this year. That Maryland game was hysterical, though, wasn't it? So the Indiana game that went into overtime, I'm going to watch that probably tonight. Fascinated to watch it. I used to have a lot of great respect for the Penn State program. A lot of respect. It turns out there's some terrible things going on there. But I liked the way they played on the field. I liked they played tough, hard, no showboating, respected the opponent, helped their teammates, supported their teammates. I liked it. I liked the whole thing. And I think their fans appreciated that. No names on the back, strap it up, nothing fancy, come and hit you. James Franklin is not that. He's boisterous, he's disrespectful, runs up the score on Pittsburgh, ran it up on Michigan State. That's fine, whatever. Afraid to play Pittsburgh, unrivaled, all that stuff. That's not the Penn State. It's not the Penn State hard-nosed sportsmanship thing that they used to be. I have trouble saying that, knowing what we know what we know now about what was going on beneath the surface there. But I remember when they were trying to run it up on Pittsburgh or somebody. Todd Blackledge, a former Penn State quarterback, national championship quarterback, was doing the color commentary, and he was flat out saying he didn't expand on it, but he said, I don't like this, because they were trying to run it up on Pittsburgh. That's not the Penn State way. James Franklin's not a Penn State guy. I know he's coaching Penn State, but if things get a little off kilter there, could that thing go south in a hurry? I don't see it going south immediately. This is certainly a shocking development this year. Everybody can have one off year. Brian Kelly went 4-8 just a couple of years ago. Now he might have his best team at Notre Dame. So I don't see anything getting dislodged at Penn State, but that seat could get warm quickly. I don't think it's going to hurt their recruiting. They have their way of getting their players, including players from the Detroit area. But the Big Ten East is interesting. Ohio State keeps rolling. Michigan's getting a little teetery. You got teams from the bottom. Michigan State's teetery. Michigan State obviously has a lot of rebuilding to do, and that's part of the vacuum that's going on. Meanwhile, can Michigan State be good and Indiana good at the same time? Yeah, they don't recruit a lot of the same players. But it's interesting and ironic that here comes Indiana, Maryland, and Rutgers. I assume here comes Rutgers. They just beat Michigan State. Rutgers is playing some fun football, too. Trick plays, losing games, but they got kind of a good thing going on there. Michigan State's going to have to hustle to hold on to Audric Estime and Gino Vandermark. But the Big Ten East, familiarity breeds contempt, right? Among programs. I don't know. I don't hate Maryland. I like Maryland. I don't know. They've been good here and there. They were good with Friedgen. One of the first games I remember as a kid was Maryland against Tennessee in the Liberty Bowl in like 1975, and for some reason I liked Maryland. Rutgers, way back 30 years ago, I had Rutgers on my dark horse list to join the Big Ten. And Larry Lage from the Associated Press, if he has a good memory, he'll remember me saying that because he vehemently disagreed. That's when Lage was doing some stringer work for us at Spartan Magazine when he was still a student at Michigan State. But I was like, Rutgers, they have television sets. And that's what got them in the Big Ten was television sets. But now that things are heading toward cord cutting and a la carte, the Rutgers thing doesn't make as much sense. But now they might actually be decent again. I don't know. They're heading in the right direction. Maryland, I thought they were, what they lose like 8 straight to finish the season last year? I thought they were done. I thought Loxley was going to have a streak like he did at New Mexico State or wherever it was when he went like 1-20. He was a good guy to hire at the time because of the tragedy that happened, because I think he was a good bridge for outreach and good feeling in the community. But I didn't have much belief that he was going to do anything, get that program going. Wouldn't surprise me if he recruited well for a little bit, but I thought they would blow a gasket and be behind the wall real quick too. But beating Penn State, of course they're not rivals because Penn State's unrivaled. But that was hilarious. I got to watch that game too. I'm not sure what was going on there. Question number 7. Michigan State Pat in Atlanta via St. Clair Shores says, how many recruits remaining do you see Mel and the staff taking? You know, Mel said something in the spring about taking 25 recruits. I don't know where they would find room to do that. He may have said that back when he was expecting to get more attrition after spring practice, but they didn't have a spring practice. Michigan State has 17 commitments right now. Do they have room for 8 more? I wonder about some of the scholarship guys that are not traveling with the team right now. We've not seen Mustafa Khalifa. He's been overtaken by walk-ons like Van Opstal as the left tackle, second string. James Ohanba's come out as the new second string right guard. You know, Jack Henricks, walk-on from Wisconsin, doing a good job. They've moved in. Meanwhile, like Damon Kaler's not traveling. Mustafa Khalifa's not traveling. You look on defense, there's some others. So, Larice Nelson, a wide receiver, not traveling. Who's the other guy? The guy's name I always forget, Javez Alexander or something like that. I've never seen him in uniform. I think that's another guy that was injured as a high school senior. So those guys, I think the writing's on the wall for those guys. They may need to look elsewhere. So if that happens by January 1st, maybe that room could be cleared to have room for 25 scholarships this year. I think they've got 17. Room for 8 more. I'm expecting 8 more. He said 25 in the spring. Somehow, some way, maybe they will. They'll get to that. Mall 286 out of Philadelphia. Now, I remembered, Mall. I remember where you're from, South Philadelphia. But on the Underground Bucket message board, you didn't say where you were from. Otherwise, I would have said parts unknown. But now I remember, South Philadelphia. This is a deep thought question. I was watching Rocky the other night, by the way. Rocky, the movie. I'm a big boxing guy. It might surprise you, but I don't like Rocky. I don't like that series. It's just a little too... I don't like my fiction to be so fictitious. You know what I'm saying? But the one part of that movie that's okay. I thought Adrian was okay. What's her name? Talia Share. I like her all right. Okay, I like the character development there. But that the background. That movie really starts in the 14th round when Balboa gets dropped by a big right hook. Boom, on the mat. And then the theme music hits another gear. And it's whether or not he can get up. And you're rooting for him because his life has been so tough and so difficult. And now he's just trying to get up and finish the fight. So that's when the movie starts, is when he's on the deck in the 14th round. It's just the end. The rest of the fight seems only another 3 or 4 minutes, and it's predictable. It's not predictable because he loses the decision, which I thought was great. He lost the fight. That's outstanding. But when he's on the deck in the 14th round with the music, that's pretty good. It's a little bit cheesy, the way he's like hyperventilating and convulsing as he tries to get to his feet. But the rest of it, it's all right. It's all right. Anyway, South Philadelphia Mall says, deep question. Let's play the what-if game from the Bobby Williams era. Let's play the what-if game. What if that were sounds like a game show. Welcome to the what-if game. Category number 1, the Bobby Williams era. He says, name 3 or 5 recruits that went elsewhere that could have changed MSU football history. And he says, I ask because during my time at MSU, I always heard stories about how guys like Larry Fitzgerald, Kellen Winslow Jr., and Lamar Woodley were big on MSU but could not pull the trigger. That's true. All 3 of them liked Michigan State, but it would not have made a difference because they had problems in that program, problems off the field, partying, problems with just dry rot in the program, discipline, guys getting away with stuff and not having to, no ramifications. So even if those guys would have went to Michigan State, just like Charles Rogers did and Jeff Smoker, those guys were maybe better, some of them, but it wouldn't have made a difference. They went 4-8 and he was fired in 2002. Maybe they win a game or 2 more, but too many problems. Was not going to make a difference. So that's the end of that game show. We have some lovely parting gifts for you. Question number 9, Sorry12 says, do you know of any 2021 linebackers that we are actively recruiting outside of Mag, the kid from California? I had his pronunciation earlier, but I've forgotten it. He says, seems weird that linebacker is an urgent position of need, but we are not hearing much about any linebackers for the class. I agree. And he says, hitting the portal in the offseason makes sense based on the current roster, but you would think they would want 1 or 2 for the 2021 class as well. Dude, I agree. And I know they went after Budden, and you've not really seen anything come in the meantime in that category. They got to recruit a couple more linebackers. I think they've got to see that. There's playing time available. I'm with you. We've got our ear to the ground. We'll let you know when we hear something about linebacker recruiting. But right now, I've got nothing. I'll ask Corey about it. Maybe you can post about it. Maybe we'll have a recruiting wrap coming up soon. WX Spartan on the banks of the Saginaw River says, Jim, what was there less emphasis on special teams late in D'Antonio's tenure? It seemed like early on, special teams were so important, like Little Giants, Mousetrap, Rangers, etc. He said, but it seemed like at the end of his tenure, a lot of the special teams was fair catch and kneel down. Didn't seem there was as much risk taking, or it didn't have the same creativity as before. You're right. We didn't see the trick plays that we saw in the first half of the D'Antonio era. I think that's because when teams started to play Michigan State, they had an eye for those things. Michigan State was scouted to do some trickery in special teams, and once that hat's out of the bag, it's hard to surprise anybody, so they didn't do it as much. But you're right. As soon as the NCAA changed the rule on kickoffs to where you could fair catch a kickoff, Michigan State was like, yeah, we'll do that. I mean, last year all they did was fair catch kickoffs, which just makes things easier for the opponent. Michigan State didn't go for pump blocks. We talked about that in the past. So, yeah, I mean, they were in punt safe a lot, so they don't go for punt returns, so they weren't getting any punt returns because they don't set up for a return, because if you set up for a return, it makes you susceptible for a fake. They didn't want to be susceptible for a fake. So you've got a special teams unit that's not going for blocking a punt, they're not going for a return, they're playing punt safe, and then on kickoff returns, they're doing fair catches. So you're exactly right. Then they're not faking much. So you're right. Yeah. I don't know if that's a case of not putting as much emphasis on it or just getting non-aggressive. I don't know. Anyway, that's all the questions from the mailbag. Let's go back to the chat area. And I thought I saw, yes, I did. Chris Trainum from Philly with the $25 personal sponsorship. Awesome, man. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much for the big personal sponsorship. And I want to remind people, we appreciate those. And it doesn't have to be $25 like Chris. Appreciate Chris. Appreciate Detroit Spartan and what you did last week. But, hey, man, anyone that wants to throw $2 in the tip jar, that's awesome, too. It makes everything worthwhile, and it helps us with our budget, quite frankly. But appreciate it. Appreciate that from Chris. Really do. Ding, ding, ding. I don't have my air horn or a bell still, and I'm getting crap for that. Deservedly so. But really appreciate that. I looked to find it because usually with a personal sponsorship, there's often a question that comes with it. And with the personal sponsorship, that question will go right to the top. We'll see. We're running out of juice here with the phone a little bit. We've been going about 96 minutes. We probably have a few more minutes. Let's go through the chat area. Let's see if we go through quickly. See if we can. All right, trying to find my place. JUCOs. All right, Hayden Fisher says, Comp. William Anglin, Colorado 2020 signee, originally from Glenville, Ohio, entered the transfer portal today. 6'2" athlete. Anticipate any interest from the staff. Great find, Hayden. I heard a little bit about that guy, but I don't know much. But yes, I would say so. I would say if Mel Tucker and his staff still has contact with players in Colorado, you know that they do, just like when D'Antonio brought Trevor Anderson up here from the University of Cincinnati. If there's anybody at Colorado that they can contact, or if the guy's contacting them and they can genuinely, sincerely say, yes, if you came here right now, you would be starting, or you would be in the playing group for sure. We know you. We know what we have here. You can play here. And you're talking about a guy from Cleveland coming back home. Sounds like a natural to me. 6'2" athlete. I don't know anything about him. I'll be asking around about him to find out anything more. Great question. I'm going to copy that right now. I know it's been talked about a little bit, but I want to look into that. That's an interesting one. Doors Fan 91 Comp, what is your take on Adam Burghorst? Seems like he's being wasted by barely playing in the tight end group. Back to defensive end, or do you think he sticks with baseball? Man, it's a good question. I expected more out of him. Tight end also. All of a sudden, Tyler Hunt played more than Burghorst. There was some talk that Burghorst would be their most physical guy in terms of blocking, but did not get on the field much. He's played a little bit, but now seeing his playing time decrease a little bit. Let me see if I can find the snap count. Or the total number of snaps. Played 4 snaps. Against Iowa. I agree. That's a little bit of a surprise. A little bit of a, I don't know. Stick with baseball, possibly. Move to defensive end. You know, the defensive ends right now, Beasley, I talked about him earlier, didn't have his best game, got moved off the line a little bit. You know, Michael Fletcher had a tackle for loss and a sack. Showing some good things. Still looks like a young puppy out there. Kind of thin, needs to, you know, fill into his frame a little bit. Showing some straight line speed and quickness and strength. And a couple times at the point of attack, he was strong, and he's going to get stronger and bigger as he fills out. Straight line speed. Not a bendy guy, not a guy that's going to turn the corner. I've always said that about him. Maybe he can manufacture and develop a little bit of that to his game. But Fletcher looks like he's got a future. Camper, you know, doing okay. Not a guy that's going to make a lot of plays, but he wasn't getting pushed off. Panashuk, left that game. I'm not sure how serious his injury was, but I like the way Panashuk is playing. Quickness and strength. He does make some plays. He does disengage. Was not great against Rutgers, but was better against Michigan and was pretty good in this game, believe it or not. Went out with the injury. Not sure how serious that is. So you've got those 4 defensive end. Could Berghorst help there? Probably could, but you're robbing Peter to pay Paul because they need tight ends too. But you're right if he's not playing at tight end. But you're just one little pulled hammy away from having a problem there. But like this past weekend at tight end, you had Gillison and Tyler Hunt. And that was it, right? At tight end. Smitty Rock says, we need an experienced quarterback who is used to winning. Maybe a grad transfer. Yeah. But, there's people talk about these nameless, faceless grad transfer quarterbacks that they think are out there. Remember last year we looked at it for Michigan State. Michigan State was interested in JT Daniels, the guy from USC that everybody wanted, goes to Georgia, and he's been hurt. And everybody's, I guess, clamoring for him to play. He's been injured. Then he's not injured, but then he still can't beat out Dior Mathis. I think, is it Dion Mathis? What's his name? Can't beat out him or Stetson. What's his name? He'll play, and JT Daniels, they say he's talented, whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets out there and he's not so great. And then, there was the Costello kid, went from Stanford to Mississippi State, had the one huge game since then. Dwan Mathis, thank you. Dior Mathis was the corner that went to Oregon out of Detroit, right? So, the kid that went to Mississippi State, okay, whatever. But usually in terms of grad transfer quarterbacks, it's a small pool of people. We were keeping an eye on the guy at Boston College that was grad transferring. I'm not sure where he ended up. But, there's guys like Justin Fields out there and Jalen Hurts, but there's not many of those guys. Shea Patterson, but those guys go to Ohio State. Those guys go to Oklahoma. One guy went to Michigan. Last year you saw the bowl game. Anthony Brown, he went to Oregon, did he? Is he doing anything? Oregon played last week and I heard they looked pretty fast. So maybe Anthony Brown did pretty well. The guy from Boston College, maybe he's doing well. I'm not sure. I watched some Boston College film last year after Michigan State seemed to show some interest in Anthony Brown. And he just looked like a guy, You saw the bowl game. Michigan State played Wake Forest. And their quarterback, what's his name? Jamie, what's his name? He goes to Georgia. He was like the best grad transfer quarterback of the class last year. Michigan State saw him in a bowl game. Did you think he was that great? And he goes to Georgia. Jamie Newman, thank you. I mean, he's good, but goes to Georgia to follow Brom, and they had Justin Fields at one point, and he's going to be the missing piece to lift Georgia over Alabama and win a national championship. He goes there, and then Georgia goes after JT Daniels out of USC. So Jamie Newman's like, I think he might have shown up at practice for a little bit, and then he says, no, I'm opting out to get ready for the NFL draft. I'm not sure what kind of NFL draft prospect he is, but he opts out. And even if he'd have played at Georgia, maybe he would have been a good complementary player to go along with all that talent. But you saw him in the bowl game. He's not great. But that was the guy Georgia went after, in addition to JT Daniels. But Georgia's getting exactly what they deserve. They've lost 2 games. They lost a couple quarterbacks, whatever. They go and they poach Jamie Newman from Wake Forest. And they can't be satisfied with that. They go and they get JT Daniels, too. They lose him. Daniels isn't ready. They got Stetson, what's-his-name, out there, and Dior, what's-his-name, who they got to decommit from Ohio State. And they've lost 2 games. Maybe they'll lose another one. They're getting what they deserve. But, yeah, you want a grad transfer quarterback? Okay. Northwestern got Peyton Ramsey from Indiana after he lost the starting job to Penix. Peyton Ramsey, decent. But, you want a grad transfer quarterback. Again, these nameless, faceless quarterbacks that people think that are out there, that they can just go and pick it off, the grad transfer quarterback tree. That tree doesn't exist. There might be 1 or 2 or 3 guys a year, and they're not going to Michigan State right now. Lombardi, I think you can win with Lombardi. He struggled on Saturday, obviously. The first interception, it was either Duplain or Carrick. One of those guys gave up a pass rush, made a mistake. Scramble rules. I described that one incorrectly. I thought that it was the same thing as the Rutgers game. It wasn't the same thing as the Rutgers game. essentially it was receiver and quarterback were not on the same page. One guy threw deep, the other did one red comeback, but it wasn't a read. It was scramble rules. Scramble rules, a lot of times, a lot of teams, what they do scramble rules is if your route was a shallow route during scramble rules, the shallow routes go deep and the deep routes come back. That's the scramble rules. As a mistake, now it's 21-0 and he throws the other interception. But no question, Lombardi threw a couple balls into the ground like he did last year. Did the injury have something to do with that? I don't know. Was he pressing because he was home? Was he pressing because he's down 28-0? The pick six was terrible, granted. And pass protection was spotty. That interception, one of the guards gave it up. There's another one where one of his incompletions, I think P and 10, first and 10 play of the second or third drive, the other guard, either Duplain or Carrick, they each were guilty once in the first three drives of just getting beat, pass rush, throw it away. So pass protection was the worst it had been all year. He's playing at home. He's down 2, 3, 4 touchdowns. All those things add up. Did he get rattled? Maybe so, maybe not. That's one thing Tucker liked about him. In the Rutgers game, never got rattled. Did he get rattled in this game? Rattled to the point where he started to try to do too much, which is something Kirk Cousins used to do. But when you talk about things this team needs, I think there's, in terms of 22 positions on the field, I don't think right now, I don't think quarterback is something I'd go looking for a grad transfer and get rid of Lombardi. I'd keep competition, Lombardi and Peyton Thorne, bring him around. I wouldn't be surprised if Theo Day goes in the pool transfer portal at some point. But if there's some quarterback out there that's great that wants to come to the Midwest to play for Michigan State, your ears are going to be open to it. Michigan State was interested in the Costello kid. Michigan State was interested in JT Daniels. So they were interested in it. Surprised they weren't interested in a linebacker and a tight end. Chris Trinum says, Burghorst and Hunt played more to fill the tight end snaps with Dotson out. Yeah, but Burghorst only played 4 snaps. Hunt played more, and he was solid. He's okay. Scored a touchdown. Trinum says, I would like to see Burghorst play more. I would too, if he were good enough or is he healthy. I don't know what the deal is. Yeah, I agree. You would want that true sophomore to be taking a step rather than, walk-on situation. Chris Trinum says, Hayden, and by the way, my phone it wasn't Michigan State of De'Aaron King as well. Yeah, I think Michigan State was interested in De'Aaron King. Ended up going to Miami. I'm going to phone without electricity on that. I don't have I can't split that thing. It goes into here, so I can't charge it while I'm doing this. It's about to run out of juice. So when that happens, I want to say thanks to everybody for showing up and being a part. We'll see you again next week. Let's see how many I can get through this. Trying to go to the lightning round. Chris Trinum says, Hayden Fisher, any idea where Englund was repping at Colorado? His tape on Rivals was at quarterback for Glenville. Smokey Gamers says, if we moved back to a 4-3, do you think defensive could carry the game? Our linebackers are not athletic enough for 4-2-5. Well, they may not have enough linebackers to do a 4-3. You got Boateng would give you a third one. Klein, you got 4. I don't know. But you know what? If they didn't run a 4-3 against Iowa, I don't think we're ever going to see it. I had heard that was still part of the playbook, but if they didn't run it in that situation against that team, we're not going to see it. Tom Coyle says, if and when things get back to normal, this will be one of the best podcasts you ever did. How come? Thanks. Appreciate that. If and when things get back to normal, this will be one of the, like this one, if things get back to normal. You mean on a weekly basis? I'm not sure, but I appreciate the compliment. A guy named If It's Not Broken, Fix It. He says, I can't believe that I just found this channel. You, sir, have a new sup. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. We love the Michigan State fans. Make sure to subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Thanks. Hayden Fisher says, Randall was arrested on Sunday morning. Okay, we went through that a little bit. Bradley Cruz says, thanks for all the work you do. Thank you. Trainum says, motor vehicles. Sorry. Okay, I've been through that. Well done. Watercraft. Ty Garland checking in. Things are competitive there at safety. Coyle, he can't help himself. Michael Muscari says, I wonder if Fulton would be in the playing group without the suspension. Great question. I saw him in the green-white game 18 months ago. It's the only time I really saw him play. Looked like a decent plugger there in the middle. I'm not sure if he'd have been much different than Noah Harvey. I'm not sure, but they could use another body there. Could use some competition there that if somebody makes a gap error that you got somebody waiting in the wings to come in and take the playing time. Tom Coyle says Michigan State football is in good hands with Comp and coach. Well, I've got nothing to do with it. But I tell you what, it's just a press conference, but for me and what I'm looking for, Mel Tucker won the press conference today. I like the guy that's hard-nosed, knows what he wants to get done. It's not just like throwing out cliches, has a vision for what he wants to get done, knows how to coach it, knows what it looks like. Got to get those gap situations fixed. Only so much you can do if you can't just, as Nick Saban used to say, it's not like you can just go crap another player. All right, Tom Coyle, all excited. Appreciate that. Hayden Fisher says, stop what you're doing and give this video a like for Comp. Thanks, Hayden. Brian V says, Chief Borders, I forgot him. One of my favorite names in recruiting this year. Yes, I'm not sure what's going on there. Committed to Florida. Michigan State was keeping in contact with him. Michigan State's going to keep a few spots open. If Michigan State goes in the tank and struggles the rest of the year, they might want to go ahead and fill these slots up. But if they have a couple more games like they did against Michigan, their recruiting strength could increase here in the late term. Blong John says, I don't think the kid from out west is leaving the West Coast. Blong John would know. He knows the West Coast. And yeah, that one seems like it's kind of lost some fizz lately. Chris Trinum says, anything new with the Mangum, Jaden, Jaron comp? Has Dad commented on how the post-Tucker era has gone? It looks like Jaron only got 9 carries, 6 yards, and a touchdown against UCLA. I saw a little bit of that UCLA game, and I saw the guy wearing jersey number 1 was getting the carries. I've not talked to Mangum's dad. As you know, high school friend and teammate of mine. And we played some text tag and phone tag a couple of weeks ago, but I've not heard from him, but I should be reaching out to him for a number of things. Yeah. Michael Muscari says, do we think Bates is still potentially reclassifying? That's the idea I get. Yes. Old Tuck says, I have a turnaround like James Edwards. That's when we're talking about the starting 5. Old Tuck in the middle. James Edwards. The Pistons used to establish the turnaround jumper with Buda Edwards in the post. First play of the first quarter, first play of the second half. Every game established the low post. Call Me Kirk says, what up, Comp? Any truth to the rumors that Stephen Johnson was not an entire staff choice, but just HB, and they trusted HB and let him get his guy? Call Me Kirk. Where'd you hear that rumor? Go ahead and send me a Twitter message or something. I just said I don't read Twitter messages. If you're a SpartanMag subscriber, you know how to get a hold of me. My email address is on there somewhere. I don't know. I wouldn't doubt that's the case. Seth Foreman says, any chance any of the running backs get converted to linebacker? I mean, they need that, right? Brandon Wright played defense in high school. Elijah Collins was a hard contact safety guy in high school. I don't know how those guys would accept that. That's part of it. The Eaglin kid from Texas, I don't know if he could do it. But yeah, when you dress and travel 5 scholarship running backs and they all play and you saw what you have there, none of them are standing out. I think Jordan Simmons has a shot to be pretty good. But you're right. I mean, when you've got a shortage of linebackers and what seems to be a surplus, 6 scholarship running backs on the roster right now with, 2 more coming in next year? Yeah, you're not going to have 8 running backs on scholarship next year. It would make sense for that to happen. I don't know who would be the choice. I mean, Brandon Wright, Collins, I don't know. Cameron Trigg says, do you think Langford will start the first game? It sounds like it. I thought initially he might be an off-the-bench type of guy, but it sounds like Izzo might want to do that, but they want to go slow with Langford also. I think long-term Izzo's talked about Langford starting. And I don't know. It's a good question. Randall Owen says, at Iowa, we were behind a huge amount, and Thornton Day didn't get any snaps. Are they just that bad? I don't know. Lombardi's last series was with 11 minutes to go in the game. Then Thorne went in at 6 minutes and didn't get the ball back. Thorne and Day, I mean, they like Day's ability. We've talked about that before. A little bit foggy here and there. I wouldn't say they're that bad. I think that they believe in Lombardi, and I think they wanted him to finish that game on a good note, as lame as that might sound. Tucker continued to coach Lombardi through the course of that game, through the blowout, telling Lombardi, hey, keep talking to the guys, keep leading the guys. So, even though that game was getting away, Tucker was continuing to coach the rest of the season in the third quarter with Lombardi. But you're right. It would have been good to take some inventory to see what those guys could do, throw some passes. Thorne goes in for 3 plays, hands it off 3 times. Kind of a missed opportunity, wasn't it? I agree. Hayden Fisher says, Owens Thorne did get some snaps at the end of the game. Randall Owens says Hayden Fisher wasn't it just one series? Yes. Okay. All right. Tyler Miller, any news on Andrew Anthony if he's flipping or if he heard anything more from the coaching staff? He's heard from Michigan State's coaching staff. Michigan State is still recruiting him. Question is, how hard is Michigan recruiting him? Are they going to let him get away? The Michigan tire fire is not looking so good right now, and Andrew Anthony is interested in Michigan State. Drake Martinez. What's that? Is he the quarterback at Drake Martinez? Is the quarterback at Nebraska? Who's Drake Martinez? Pork Rind says, I think Michigan will have the best defense in college football by the end of the year. Pork Rind says, Harbaugh is doing a great job. Pork Rinds is a smart man. Chris Trinum says, try living in Pennsylvania and dealing with Penn State fans. It is brutal. Okay. I trust you on that. I can see that. Because they've been good, and they've got that feeling about themselves. Plus, they've got like that East Coast in-your-face, we're great type of stuff. I could see where that would get brutal. I used to like Penn State back in those days, but I was more of a Panther fan, Pitt Panthers, when I was a youngster. Dan Marino. Hayden Fisher says, Maryland has got themselves a guy in freshman 5-star Raheem Jarrett. Looks real good thus far. Hayden Fisher says, good to see Angelo Gross travel and get a bit last week. Yeah, and like I said, he was on the field and kind of messed up that shallow crossing route. Didn't see Davion Williams. Angelo also played in that nickel role. He's playing corner and nickel. So he's kind of the second-string nickel. Julian Barnett started at nickel with Shaq Brown out at regular corner, and then Angelo Gross rotated in. I like some of the things Shaq Brown's doing. And Philly, Chris Trinum with the tip jar, personal sponsorship, appreciate that. Brian V says, has Ian Stewart really converted to tight end? There's chatter on the bunker about it this evening. Good question. I've heard a little bit about that, and when I watched Ian Stewart during warm-up at Michigan in the Rutgers game, he's a big thigh guy. I'm not sure he's as elegantly fluid and start and stop as you need to be a wide receiver. So he's a physical guy at 6'3", that played some, outside linebacker, some defense, athlete, flexible guy. Would not surprise me. I don't know what that means for Burghorst. Don't know what that means for Dotson. It's a way for Stewart to get on the field more. Wouldn't doubt it. Can he block? No idea. Good kid, though, athlete. I think he's willing, so it wouldn't shock me. Talking about Anthony Brown, Jamie Newman. From the looks of it, he is quarterback number 2 at Oregon. Talking about the transfer from Boston College. See what I'm talking about? Grad transfer sounds like a great idea. In actuality, there's not many of them that are actually can come in and like be better than Rocky Lombardi, believe it or not. It might be 2 or 3 nationally a year, and they're going to go to Florida, Georgia, Alabama, or LSU, something like that, Notre Dame. And there's not more than 2 or 3, seriously, that would be like better than Rocky Lombardi. Most guys that are better than Rocky Lombardi are going to stay at their school. Jamie Newman was an exception, and that ended up being a big turd sandwich for everybody, including the Wake Forest fans. Feel bad for the Wake Forest fans. Garrett Donegan says, wasn't Michigan State after Derek King? We talked about that. Aaron May says, I would think you would bring Lingford off the bench, basically our 6th man, start him off slow, just to monitor him. I agree with that. And Gabe Brown is a guy that's waited his turn as a junior. He's explosive, good guy. I think he probably started the season with the Browns starting. And then Izzo has mentioned he's interested in possibly transitioning. Izzo has used leaders, 5th-year seniors in the past off the bench, or 4th-year seniors off the bench. Torbrick came off the bench. Chris Hill came off the bench. Tum Tum came off the bench. He's done it before. Moved guys to bench later in the year if someone's overtaken them. Langford, you can put him on a pitch count. You might not want him playing 32 minutes a game. You can limit his minutes by not starting him. Makes sense to me, too. Gabe Brown, though, Izzo says he likes the idea of Gabe Brown coming off the bench because he's an instant offense guy and the energy. He thinks that can be like a counterpunch, like Morris Peterson was, to really be a juice guy, seriously a juice guy off the bench. I think Izzo will do a little bit of both, and it'll be interesting to see how that develops.